It is a joy to be here this morning and to be in a position to be able to share with the Downey Church for Spiritual Living. It has indeed been a journey, no doubt. I attended my first Church of Religious Science in 1996, I think it was. Lakewood Church of Religious Science with Reverend Diane Bursakowski. And at that time, I had really received some information that gave me some hope. And I needed some hope at that time. Also at that time, I was a student at Long Beach City College, just taking classes. In fact, I was in the journalism department at that time. And in my journalism, I was hoping that I was going to be able to write articles and share information and do videos that would transform people's lives, that would help people in a way, that would give them something that they could take with them, a morsel of truth, a little bit of hope, and that they would be able to use that to transform. I had done a lot of transforming before joining the Church of Religious Science, but then I learned something new. And I want to share a little bit of that with you today, but I'm going to tie it in a little bit with my teaching from Long Beach City College because I can't help it. I'm a teacher. I am a teacher. I've been teaching at Long Beach City College for 13 years, and what is so beautiful and what has happened during that 13 years is our culture has gone through a shift. And those of you who have been around religious science for 20 years or 15 years or even 10 years may have noticed this shift yourself. That some of the things that you wanted to talk about 15 years ago and people rolled their eyes and thought you were being woo-woo, now are saying, you know, I heard about that on CNN. I read an article about that in Time magazine. So these concepts, I want you to know, are being spoken about in a community college setting and backed up by research. So it's not woo-woo, even if your family tells you it is. Your family. And that's what part of my message today is family. The theme for this entire month is the power of grace. And last week, it was Mother's Day. So I decided I was going to tie in grace and tie in a mother story. But this is not going to be about my mother, but my grandmother, my Grandma Betty. My Grandma Betty was the queen of grace, at least in my eyes. And I'm sure there are some of you who are watching right now who think, yes, that's how I feel about my grandma as well. I titled my talk, Grandma's House, the Real Healing Center. Because my journey included so many personal problems that were followed by so many different forms of treatment. I was looking for answers all different kinds of places. I was looking for answers at the 12-step meetings. I was looking for answers from the therapist. I was looking for answers from the classes I took. And I got answers everywhere I went, but all of them had a slightly different twist on them. I was trying to find a common theme within all of that. I was trying to find a vein of truth in all of that. What was there in common with all of these experiences that had a transformative effect? And it ends up that grace has a lot to do with it. Love is really what it has to do with. And here at Science of Mind, when we talk about our spiritual mind treatment and we talk about step 1 being recognition and step 1 being knowing that God is all, what we're also saying is that love is all because God is love. So after all of these years, what I found out is that the Beatles were right. Love is the answer. But then the question is, what does that mean and how do I apply that to my life? And why is it that sometimes it seems that love is really the problem? Love is the thing that hurt. Love is the thing that broke my heart. Love is the thing that destroyed me. How could love be the answer? Trust me, I've asked all of these questions and I've searched for these answers for a long time. I've had a total of 4 stepdads. One of those stepdads is at the Tescadero State Prison under the Sexually Violent Predator Act. I have lived years and years in an environment of chaos, violence, scares, seeing what appears to be love, seeing people who get married and then hurt each other tremendously, who break hearts, who leave devastation behind them, who seem to not care at all. How do you find hope in all of that? Well, luckily I had a bridge with my grandma. I didn't understand what I had until it's gone, which unfortunately is what happens to a lot of us. But it turns out that it's not just my grandma that can give this to me, and that's a big part of my lesson as well. But I want to tell a little bit of story about Grandma. Why was it transformative? Why was it healing to be at her house? Why does that tie into what I teach at my community college right now? So I'm going to talk about grace, and I'm going to talk about PACE, P-A-C-E. It's an acronym. And it is the acronym that we use in our Helping and Listening Skills class. I'm going to tell you what it stands for in just a moment here. But by using PACE, P-A-C-E, you are able to open the door to a level of acceptance, love, and listening that transforms lives. My college students can learn it. They can take it home to their family and apply it, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about it here today. PACE. It stands for partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how my grandma's style is, and I'm going to tell you a little bit how you can apply it to your own life, how it ties in with the science of mind principles. I told you about what my home life was like. I told you about my stepdads, and you can get a little glimmer of what it might have been like to be there. Not the safest place in the world. Didn't feel safe. But what would happen is, luckily, every once in a while, I got to go visit my grandma. And when I went to go visit my grandma, Betty, I am telling you, I could sit down on her couch, sink into the couch cushions, and within a matter of a few minutes, her love and acceptance, her willingness to listen to me, her acceptance of me melted away the hardness that I had been building since the last time I was at her house. I could literally feel myself begin to melt right into the couch cushions. And by the time I was an adolescent, sometimes when I would go to her house, I would fall asleep. That place was a place of reprieve. Grace and reprieve go hand in hand. It's in those moments when you melt that grace is present. It's in those moments when you let go of the pain, the hardness, the sadness, the loneliness, the memories. That's when grace happens. It happens in an instant, and you don't have to do anything to get it. Some of us don't feel safe enough to even access that one instant. Some of us don't feel safe enough to let down the walls even for 30 seconds. What do you do when that happens? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about how you could be able to provide that for yourself, for your family, and for each other. I brought a couple pictures with me today just to remind myself, and maybe later if you'd like to see them, I can show them to you. But my childhood and the troubles that I had in my childhood, part of how I decided to deal with that is through addiction. And it was pretty serious for a little while there. I ended up moving from Costa Mesa, California to the San Fernando Valley where my grandma was, and going into my first alcohol and drug recovery program. And when I was there, and my grandma came to visit me there. She did not judge me. She did not chastise me. She didn't give me a lecture. She didn't give me dirty looks. She didn't belittle me or put me down. She was the same grandma that she was when I was 10, when I was 5, when I was 12. And that grace, once again, lifted the burden of shame and guilt and all the names and all of the negativity off of me. Having had that experience and knowing that it existed made it possible for me to go back to it at other times. Other times, like in my meditation, for example. In fact, sometimes I used the visualization. I closed my eyes and imagined that I was on my grandma's couch while I was meditating. And I found that I was able to return to that feeling, sometimes for very short periods of time, sometimes for a long period of time. Now, I know everybody feels good about their grandma. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. But I want to tell you about some of the things that I learned that my grandma was doing, that she may not have even known she was doing, but that now we're teaching in a community college. We're teaching people how to do these things, and we're saying that doing these things increases a person's chance of changing behaviors like long-term addiction, increases a person's chances of changing their patterns of negative, destructive behaviors. It's from a book called Motivational Interviewing. This is a style of working with clients that's beginning to pick up popularity. And within that, there's something called the spirit of motivational interviewing. And what the book says is, if you have the spirit of motivational interviewing alone, but don't even know how to use the techniques, you've done it. You have accomplished what needs to be accomplished in order to help a person change. The spirit of motivational interviewing, again, is characterized by partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. The acronym is PACE. I want to talk a little bit about each one of those things and a little bit about how my grandma embodied those things. Partnership. What partnership means is I'm not in competition with you. I am working together with you. I am on the same team as you. I want you to succeed, and I want me to succeed. I want us both to succeed. I want us both to do well together. You're my partner, so that means when you do well, I do well. We're working together on this. That was the kind of communication I had with my grandma, and that was so evident. I didn't have to prove anything to her. She wasn't trying to change me in any way. This is something we can provide for ourselves. We can begin to provide for ourselves. How can I be on my own team instead of against myself? And in addition to that, we can have a partnership with the Holy Spirit. We can have a partnership with God, not against, not fighting against, not running from, but joining together. The other part is acceptance. Acceptance is so nurturing in and of itself, relieves so many burdens, so many hang-ups. But an aspect of that acceptance that we talk about in class, there's 4 aspects of acceptance in the book, and I'm only going to talk about one of them right now. One of those aspects is absolute worth. Now what that means is you don't have to do something to be worthy. In a lot of our human relationships, you have to do something to be worthy. You have to have the right skin color. You have to be the right size and shape. You have to wear the right clothes. There's all kinds of conditions that we put on each other and on ourselves, but acceptance is transformative. It's healing, accepting where you are and where you've been. Acceptance. So we can provide that for ourselves through our own healing journey. We can also provide that for other people. That as soon as we stop trying to change people, wanting to judge, wanting to control, wanting to manipulate, and instead just accepting, that's when change is able to take place. One of the things we learn in the class is that resistance to change is normal. And what happens is resistance to change increases when somebody judges. Maybe you've experienced this yourself, someone trying to push you around, boss you around, tell you what to do. And as soon as they start doing that, you're less inclined to want to change. So this is a little secret. If you've been working on somebody who you would like to have them change, start accepting them. See what happens. Now we move on to compassion. Oh, compassion is a talk all in and of itself. And I actually did talk on the topic of compassion a couple months ago here. Compassion. Can you be compassionate for yourself? My grandma knew a certain level of things that were going on in the house when they were going on. And those of you who are here in this room know that the way things were handled, let's say, in the 80s, is not the way they're handled now, right? And we all know that certain family secrets stay family secrets. It's not easy. Sometimes you can't change what goes on in the family, and you certainly can't change what went on in the family. But compassion is accessible. And I have found over the years that I cannot be compassionate for someone else if I'm not first compassionate for myself. One of the things that was so great that I learned from working with students and from working with clients is that any time they came to me with something that I had any kind of discomfort about hearing or any judgment about, or I was thinking to myself in my mind what they should do and how they should handle it, it was always an opportunity for me to heal. And what they were doing is they were touching on something that I had not healed. But when I healed it, I could see that person from a different perspective. So sometimes we have to have compassion for the pain that we went through, the suffering that we went through, to tell ourselves that we did the best we could. There's nothing we could have done different. We were small children. What were we supposed to do? Our parents were doing the best they could. What were they supposed to do? They did some of the things that needed to be done, and they didn't get the support either. What were they supposed to do? So we could just breathe in some compassion for those who are here, for those who are not here, for ourselves. And then finally, evocation. This is good stuff, I am telling you. Evocation. We do an evocation here, right? We call it evocation, but this is a college textbook we're using here. This is something that's been backed by research that proves that people change more successfully if they have this and do this. Evocation. What it means is everything you need, anything any human being needs in order to make a change, whatever motivation they need, inspiration, guidance, answers they need, are already in them. What our job to do is to evoke it from them. Call it forward, call it out. And how we do it is those steps ahead of the ones I mentioned before. Partnership, acceptance, and compassion. We don't do it by beating other people up. We don't do it by beating ourselves up. We don't do it by staying guilty. We don't do it by getting angry. We do it in that place of grace. That moment where we could just let go and access the unconditional love that's always there, ever present. And that is what the Science of Mind teaching is about. It's always present, just waiting for us to access it. So as I leave you today, I am charging you. I am giving you a charge, and I am saying that if you are a grandma, if you have a grandma, if you miss your grandma, if you've ever had the ability to experience what it is I'm talking about right here, do it again and keep doing it. Make it your mission to live from that space. And not only will you help heal others, you will help heal yourself. And so it is. Thank you.